talking about the biggest disconnect of them all. This is where most programs will become disconnected, is that this SWPPP is subcontracted out to that environmental consultant, and it's developed pretty independently of everything else. For the most part, a lot of SWPPs I do have done in the past is pretty independent. And it takes effort for a SWPPP developer to say, wait a minute, as you said, this is a team sport. I need to be talking to the players, not just to find out, like when is the project starting and when it's ending, but what's the sequencing? And
hey there, welcome to the Stormwater World Podcast. Shout out to our sponsor, Bloxam & Company. They have a sediment and erosion control stormwater inlet filter that's made of coconut fiber. I've known Eric Pierman and the gang over there at Bloxam for years. We've done business with them in the past, and we continue to do business with them to this day. It's a great product, and it's very simple to install. It comes in pads or rolls that you can customize to just about any stormwater drain, and it's very, very simple to maintain as well. You get a great visual when driving your site because you don't have to stop and look down into the drain. You can literally just put this product over the top of the drain inlet, and then you're going to see the sediment on top of it. After a rain event, you can have someone sweep it off and get prepared for the next event. They also offer a free sample, so make sure to check them out. You can go to bloxam.com, that's BLOCKSOM.com, or you can contact them at 219-363-0206, or shoot Eric an email at eric.pierman, that's PEARMAN, at bloxam.com. He can answer any of your questions you may have, as well as let you know where the closest distributor is in your area. Thanks. Let's get back to the episode. Welcome back to a new episode of the Stormwater World Podcast. I'm here with my friend John Teravskis from John, what's your company? WGR Southwest. WGR Southwest out of California. John's been on the podcast before, but we've got something fantastic for you today. John wrote an encyclopedia for stormwater. No, I'm just kidding. He wrote a book, and we want to talk about that book. We're going to be all over the place today. John, thank you so much for coming back on the pod.
So, thank you, Ty. Yeah, looking forward to talking with you.
Yeah, no, and hey, and I want to tell you thank you too for let's just get started, and then of course everybody gets an introduction. But John's been on the podcast before everybody, so if you go back, you can watch the Stormwater Awareness Week episode, or you can watch our episode from Stormwater Awareness Week. So we've been doing all kinds of content together, so you can go back and check that out. And in fact, Stormwater Awareness Week is coming up this month, and so we will get this episode out quickly, and so the links to Stormwater Awareness Week will be in the show notes. But before I give your introduction, you wrote a book called The Raindrop Connection.
Yeah,
this is crazy, John.
Here it is.
And thank you so much for sending me a copy of it. And I'm going to embarrass myself real quick because my wife and I, about a year ago, we wrote a book. Right. And so those of you watching on YouTube, you can see the size of our book. Well, you know what? That's not a book. I'm telling you, this, my friend, this is a book. All right. And for those of you who know that Crocodile Dundee reference, you are officially old like me. Man, this is fantastic. What, and we will get to your introduction, but man, what possessed you to write a book?
Oh, well, I was wondering that towards the end. I really was. Everybody says by the time, you get to publishing it, you will hate it. And pretty much that was true. But no, actually, there were several drivers. One of the biggest drivers was that we were wanting to apply for and qualify as a qualified SWPPP practitioner, qualified SWPPP developer, prerequisite approved trainer with the state of California. So probably most of your listeners won't understand what that means, and that's okay. But basically, here in California, you have to have these credentials to write construction SWPPs. And it's a two-part process. You have to take the first the Water Board California Stormwater Quality Association certified 2-day and 3-day training. 3 days for a QSD, a qualified SWPPP developer. And I've been giving that class for, well, since 2010, basically, a long time now. But the second part to getting that credential is what the state calls as underlying certification, or now lately they've been calling it prerequisite. Why the two levels? Well, the 2 day and the 3 day class, 3 days for QSDs, is really that's about the permit and it's about the regulations. But this underlying credential is about the um, the trade of stormwater control, right? Of erosion and
Mhm.
sediment control.
Yep.
It's about the trade, about what we do. And so that's why the water board said, we want this other part to be in place. Ty, years ago, I went and got my B contractor's license here in California. Uh,
Okay.
why I did that, I don't know. Yeah, actually, I was encouraging my father-in-law at the time to get his, and I said, you know what, I'll go to the contractor school with you. And I was actually shocked to find out what was on the in the class and on the exam. It was nothing about building houses. It was all about like contracting. I mean, like the paperwork of contracting
To
and the
pay for it. Yeah.
laws and
That's
the
funny. Yeah.
regulations and you know, and maybe some environmental laws, but nothing about building a house. So I found out I qualified. I took the exam, and lo and behold, I am a B licensed contractor here in the state of California. I was, this was years ago. I've
Right.
slipped
Right.
since then. But I could, on paper, build a house. Of course, in reality, I knew nothing about building a house. Um, and that's why I think the state of California does it this way. So that 3 day QSD class is about the permit and it's about the regulations. So it's the contractor school equivalent, right?
That
This
that has
class,
that is probably the best example I have heard of the drama that has gone. We have our digital marketing company that lives behind this podcast and work with a lot of brands, and we've come across through the brands that we work with the drama that has gone on in California with that underlying knowledge base, let's call it, on top, underneath the QSD certification.
yeah,
And what you just explained there about getting your contractor's license, which is why you see so many GCs that don't know how to swing a hammer,
yeah,
and they just sub everything out. All they know how to do is push paper. That is such a good example that I'm stealing it. You consider it stolen. I'm
yeah.
gonna.
All right.
That's everybody. Yeah, that is amazing.
Yeah.
But
And
before we go
it's,
any deeper, go no,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
And
No, no,
it's a valid thing. It's a valid thing in that you need to know that paperwork side. You need to know your permit.
mm,
But the
100%.
problem is you also need to know how to build a house. And that's what this book and our
Oh yeah, yeah,
connections
yeah.
course that did ultimately get approved by the water board, that's what that's about, is how to build a house now. In other words, or how to actually do erosion and sediment control.
Well, let's be clear. You guys went crazy. You went over the top. I don't believe you have to, just for those that may not be paying close enough attention to what was just said, you do not have to write a book in
Now,
order to qualify, but it apparently doesn't hurt. So, congratulations on the book. This is, the my little short story that I showed earlier, apparently, a short story was a pain to do. And so, and this thing is just chock full of like tables and product images and just backup. I mean, you've got it's completely cited. Like, I, I, I don't know what to say, man. This is awesome. I really feel like this is something that you probably cruise through and then go back and then like, hey, I need to really figure this out. You dig into that section, and this is probably more like, it should say handbook on here somewhere. It's something that probably it should stay in the truck, and it should look like it's been through a war after a couple of construction seasons, in my opinion.
well, yeah,
um
yeah.
but
It's
before
30
we go
years of
let's
experience.
Yeah, it's your life's experience in book format. Before we go any further, let's just explain who John is, what he's done. John has more than 30 years of experience in the environmental field and specializes in stormwater regulatory compliance and erosion sediment control. He holds the certifications of a qualified SWIP practitioner (QSP) and a qualified SWIP developer (QSD), a certified professional in erosion and sediment control, which is your CPESC, and a certified sediment and stormwater inspector, your SESWI, a qualified industrial SWIP practitioner, a QISP, and a Caltrans approved water pollution control manager. He has prepared stormwater pollution prevention plans for dozens of residential, commercial, industrial, roadway, and utility projects. In addition, John has provided the state of California, local counties and municipalities, farmers, and the National Parks Service support with erosion and sediment control for post-wildfire response, restoration projects, and sustainable management of soils and other natural resources. WGR Southwest Incorporated, with John as their Director of Stormwater Services Program, has been an authorized trainer of record for both industrial and construction stormwater certifications in California since 2010. As such, WGR successfully trained over 1,500 applicants for the state's QSP, QSD, and QISP certifications. WGR, with John as the editor-in-chief, publishes a monthly newsletter called the Monthly Dirt, which focuses on helping people better understand and comply with the California Construction General Permit. It has a circulation of over 20,000 people. John's also the co-host of SWPPP Radio, which is another stormwater podcast, if you can believe it. Yes, there's two out there that we're aware of. There's some water podcasts, but as far as I know, you and I are the only stormwater dedicated ones. So go check that out anywhere you listen to podcasts. And John is also involved, deeply, deeply involved, maybe the guy that helps basically put it on, Stormwater Awareness Week, which we mentioned before, is this month. So we will link to everything in the show notes, SWIP Radio, Stormwater Awareness Week. And if you're not subscribing to the Monthly Dirt, we'll have a link there for you as well. So, wow, I think that 100% qualifies you to write a book. If you're willing to if you're willing to get that many certifications and train that many people, then you're definitely willing to take on the brain damage of writing a book.
I think, yeah. Yeah, it's just, I guess, a culmination of my career. I've been around a long time, I suppose. So, I wanted to put it onto writing, and so it was a fun project. It was a fun project. One I never thought I would actually take on. It wasn't like in my bucket list, but um, as I worked through it, it was it really was a kind of a good experience.
So in our pre-show notes, we've got, let's just start right at the top, right? Because I love it, because this is me, because I tell everybody this, like, talk to me like I'm 5. So here we go. So, and I appreciate that. You already know me well, because our first bullet point here is how construction SWPPs are like dot to dot drawings that we all did while we were in kindergarten. You want to kind of unpack that for everybody?
Yeah, as I have spent the last 15 years or so um, teaching QSPs and QSDs about the construction general permit and about SWPPs, how to prepare SWPPs, but also how to implement SWPPs, it really dawned on me that a well thought out, well organized SWPP is really a lot like the dot to dot exercises we did back in kindergarten, right? So many times I go back to kindergarten. There were a lot of lessons, life lessons I learned in kindergarten, right? And one of those was connecting the dots, and really as you connect each dot, going from theory um, to identifying your pollutants to that and your activities that are driving those pollutants and the individuals that are on site, to the best management practices, all the way to the monitoring program, and then that iterative approach of using your data to actually improve your program. It really is a chain of events. It's a connected dots. Each little thing we do on a job site when it comes to stormwater management isn't a isolated standalone event. They all interrelate, they all connect. But what I've found is lots of times we have these disconnected programs. There's various reasons for that, but so what I want to do, and the reason why we called the book the Raindrop Connection, and we call the
Oh, good.
course that goes along with this the Connections course, is to connect those dots, those raindrops.
Thank you for doing that. I was sitting here thinking, I was like, wow, we're 11 minutes in, I think. And we got so excited. We never said the name of the book. So there you go, everybody, the Raindrop Connection. Yeah. So go ahead. So you mentioned becoming disconnected, and I think this is another slam dunk because I I'm interested in this conversation because I'm not a field guy, right? Like I was a software guy. I helped people in the field, and I understood it enough to where I could help them, just build out whatever they wanted in the software, the forms that they needed to be able to accomplish what they needed to do out in the field. But in what we do, I see this disconnect with what you mentioned again in our notes about it, things becoming too formulaic or template driven or like cookie cutter or copy paste, because the world we live in becomes the delta between effort and the amount of time spent. And so the faster we get from one site to the next, the more money we're making, which those two things don't always equal a proper inspection. Do you want to kind of go into how you address that in the book?
Oh yeah. You talked about being too formulaic, and that's really the one of the big disconnects or causes of the disconnects, I should say, because we can talk about what the disconnects actually are and where they manifest, but the causes, identifying the causes, is super important. And so a big cause is getting formulaic in our approach. I call it the donut counter BMP selection.
Say
Go
that.
to a
Say that
donut
again.
counter, right?
Wait. Okay, the donut. Okay, go ahead. I'm
Donuts.
with you.
You go to a donut counter, right? And you go up to the
Okay.
glass
Yeah.
and you're looking through the glass and go, "Oh, I know how to fill a box of donuts. I'm going to take 2 apple fritters, and of course we need about 4 old fashions and maybe a couple long johns. Oh, we got to have some jelly fill too, and maybe some glazed donuts." And so we just
Yes,
kind of
please.
know how to fill the box, right? And that we approach SWP writing very much the same way. We know, oh, I should have one track out control. Yeah, we should have a couple perimeter controls. Drain inlet protection. Let's not forget that. And oh, we probably should put some sort of soil cover down. And and we just kind of, if you've been doing this for a while, you know how to fill the donut box or the BMP box, is what we might say. But is that the best way to write a SWP? Now, I wouldn't say that's always wrong, especially here. I live in the Central Valley of California. It's flat. um, and you're in Texas.
Yep.
Usually the BMP donut box will probably work for most sites. But we can have a disconnected program, because if we go straight to that donut counter and we're just doing our selection based on what we intuitively think should be in the box, then we bypass some important first steps, like the fundamentals, erosion sediment control theory, and the pollution prevention, the pollutant source assessment, where we're identifying the actual pollutants we have. And that's a disconnect right there. So many SWPs, they talk about dirt and maybe pH altering substances like concrete, right? But have we truly looked at the entire site? Have we identified the trades that are going to be present? And have we addressed them? For example, stucco. Nobody ever talks about stucco people. Nobody ever talks about them. They hardly ever get mentioned in a SWP. And I review a lot of SWPPs. Um, Now, why not? Stucco should be mentioned. They have every pollutant that we're concerned about in the stormwater world. They have aggregate, they got piles of sand and gravel and dirt all over the place. They have pH altering substances, full bags and empty bags and spilled bags of stucco mixes. They have additives they add there that have heavy metals in them and other chemicals for either slow the cure or speed up the cure or change the color. They have equipment that needs to be fueled with diesel and oils. They have non-stormwater sources for curing the stucco. They have solid waste. Basically, every
Dang.
pollutant we are concerned about, they have, but no one ever talks to them because no one ever thinks about stucco being a part of the project. But we could go on to roofers and electricians and plumbers and drywallers, and painters. It goes on and on and on. And so, in becoming too formulaic, we often bypass that whole process of that pollutant source assessment.
Gotcha. So, so then what? So what's the solution? Like, so what? So to go back to the dot analogy, what are the dots that need to be connected in order to have an
Okay, so
effective
so let's
program?
talk about some common disconnections, which we already identified. So we
Okay.
talked about already that construction SWPPs many times will only address grading, undergrounding utility work, and maybe get into concrete, and pretty much stop there. They might
Okay.
jump to the very end, and perhaps the landscapers get a mention. Um, then we talked about pollutant source assessment, where we're only looking at those, but we're not looking at the other pollutants that might be there. Other disconnects are static SWPPs. In other words, we see SWPPs often that are written at the very beginning and
Yeah.
never change
Never
throughout the
change.
life of the project.
Shocking.
That's a big disconnect. Basically, we don't get
Yeah.
off the first dot and go to the second dot. Um, then we also see SWPPs that, well, they don't communicate enough details. They might say, well, hydromulch needs to be installed, or hydroseed should be installed, or drain inlet protection. In fact, here in California, and I think much of the country use terminology codes for those standards, like EC3 is hydromulch, EC4 is hydroseed, SE10 is drain inlet protection. And so you'll see a SWPPP map that says EC3, EC4, but okay, so the SWPPP writer's saying you want something on there, but what are you putting on there? There's, a lot of different hydromulches out there. Which product or type of product is it? Is it cellulose? Is it bonded fiber matrix? Is it a flexible growth media? Uh, and what kind of how much should we put on there? What's the dosage? Is it 1,500 pounds per acre, 2,500 pounds, 5,500 pounds per acre? Should it be done in 2 lifts? How should it be done? And so a big disconnect is the SWPPP writer saying, yeah, we should have some sort of erosion control on there. In fact, we'll call it hydromulch. But then when it comes to implementing the SWPPP, the contractor's left there scratching their head going, well, I don't really know what they want. And so
So
that's a
is that like
disconnect.
a yeah? Do you feel like that disconnect is somewhat that it's a combination of things, and maybe I could be wrong. Like the combination of just the template thing that you mentioned, to just copy and paste and move on. It's the easy path of least resistance, but is it also like people don't want to take on the responsibility? Like the company writing this whip doesn't want to take on either the responsibility or the potential lack of impropriety if they're promoting a specific product, or can you get to the details that need to be done without promoting a specific product to provide the end installer with the information they need?
Yeah.
Is there a liability issue there that people are trying to dodge, or what are your thoughts there? Because that's not the first time I've heard what you're saying.
Well, when you write a SWPPP, you're taking on that liability. You're basically
Right. I
saying
mean,
here's
so
how
you
you're going
should
to
go to the
control
nth
erosion.
degree.
Here's how
Yeah.
you're going to
Yeah.
control erosion. So either you decide you're going to be a SWPP developer or you're not. And if you're going to develop a SWPP, you might as well give somebody a document that actually tells them how to manage erosion and sedimentation issues on the site. So at the end of the day, you need to tell them how to do it. And if you're just given this nebulous, like, oh, I want hydroseed, it's like,
Yeah.
well, that's really not telling them much.
Right.
And
Right.
there's a lot of different range in that, anything from barely covering the ground to putting a very robust cover on there, and the huge cost range there too. So as a SWPP writer, you need to be not afraid to get out there and say, this is what you need to do. Now, it's always a balance between saying, there are some products that I just know work from experience, but usually in my SWPPs, I'll say, okay, I'd like you to use this product at this rate, and here's some application details, and I'll usually say or equivalent. That way,
Yeah.
if
Of
they
course.
find another product that's
Right.
equivalent, then great, fine. That's
Right.
good. But
Sure.
the contractor needs to know, or I'm assuming the contractor is the one implementing SWPP, generally they are. They need to
Sure.
know what is it that they're wanting. That way they can bid the project appropriately if they have the SWPP when they're bidding, or they can estimate their budget appropriately. They need to know not only just like what product, but also what's the duration of that product. Okay, so you're telling them fiber roll. And if it's a 9-month project, maybe one installation is fine. But if it's a 3-year project, you may need to have
Right.
multiple installations.
Well, that goes
And
back to getting off a dot. That goes back to getting off a dot one.
yeah, and these are
Right.
all where you get these disconnects. So if you skip that foundational, that's why chapter 1 of our book is erosion sediment theory. If you skip that over that, you go straight to BMPs, you're specifying things sometimes without really understanding why you're specifying them.
Oh, I gotcha. Start at the beginning, people. Don't skim it. Don't be me.
Yeah.
But I'm not a field guy, so I get away with that. That's who. So with your career being like you're pretty much all in California, right? Your career's been in California
Mostly,
or
mostly. I've done some other Western states, Hawaii, Nevada, some work in Oregon, Arizona, Washington,
okay.
but yeah, predominantly California keeps me pretty busy.
Right, right. But the book doesn't feel like I said, just coming kind of going skimming through it. It doesn't feel like it's only for California or for the west part of the country. And
Oh,
then you
good
already
point.
kind of
Yeah.
alluded to certain things. You've already kind of alluded to a couple little things, but I think people need to realize that this is anywhere stormwater erosion, sediment control, SWPP writing, like learn your trade book. I mean, this is. I think there's a man. Where is it? Is it on Amazon? Where is it available,
It is.
John? And
It's
we're going to put
available
the
on
show notes. It's on
Amazon.
Amazon.
It,
Um,
it's available on Amazon, so you can just Google the Raindrop connection or search for the Raindrop connection on Amazon. Also, a lot of online retailers have it. In fact, it's kind of weird. I've been seeing it even in Japanese and German and Chinese, and there's different
what?
online retailers. Not that they've translated the book, but there's
Oh,
online retailers that are
it's like,
international that are selling the book.
what?
It's like, wow, that's kind of amazing. Uh,
That's
but
that's interesting.
yeah, you can
But
get it
yeah,
on
but
Amazon or also our
yeah, just
website, which you'll probably put in our your
okay. Yeah,
notes.
yeah, we'll put that. Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. But like, man, you want to talk to that? That this is definitely not a. I don't want people to think this is a California book.
No, not at all. Now, I'm from California, so my illustrations tend to be a little bit California centric. But for example, in the book, we have table 11 that identifies uh, all the SWPP requirements for all 50 states. I've never seen a list like that before, where you had in one table all of the requirements. Now, it's kind of like a moving target. It's like nailing jello to the wall because all these states are constantly changing their permits and their requirements. So we actually maintain a website, same place you can purchase the book on our WGR website. and we keep those tables evergreen. So we will occasionally update the tables that are in the book and put them on the website so you can get a more up-to-date version of that table. But table 1 is nationwide SWIP and inspector requirements. And we also identify in there whether the state has a requirement for SWIP writers, like they have to have a certain credential or certification or experience level, and if a certain template is required of that particular state. Some states have a template that you have to follow. Others have nothing, no guidance really. So we that way, no matter where you're at in the U.S., you can look at that table and identify what your requirements are. But the book is really largely not about compliance, but more about how to have an effective stormwater program and by having a connected program.
Right. Well, you mentioned it before. You mentioned a course, and now you're updating tables. Do you want to go into, because I also, there was a little note inside my box when I got my book here. It talks about some of the SWIP template that I can go look at. You want to talk about some of the resources that
Yeah,
that are also included with your book?
yeah. Uh, because the book was a part of a course, and also because we wanted to provide a resource, if we're telling people, teaching people how to have a connected SWIP, we wanted to provide a template that kind of went hand in hand with the book, a SWIP template, I should say. So there's a construction SWIP template that you can use if you purchase a book. You'll get a link to it, and you can take that and then utilize it for your own purposes, for your own projects or your own state. You can modify it to make it specific to your locale, and use that to hopefully put together a more meaningful SWIP program that's connected, would be our goal. We also include tables that I think will be just good reference tools. We went out there, not that we recreated these, but we compiled information about dust palliatives, about soil covers. Um, Lots of times there was other governmental or non-governmental references out there that we reference in the book. The idea was to give the reader uh, one place where they could find that information. Uh, One of my frustrations over the years was just it was here, it was there, it was in different places, but I wanted to consolidate that so it made it simple for a SWIP writer to find, um, you know, uh, accurate and reliable references to this information. And so we tried to do that in the book. The other thing we did in the book that is a little bit different is that we basically uh, reorganized the BMPs. Now, here in California, there's two gold standards as far as BMP classifications. There's the California Stormwater Quality Association's organization, and then there's the
Mm-hmm.
Caltrans. They, for the most part,
Okay.
mirror one another. They use slightly different terminology, especially in their specification numbers or reference codes. Uh, but they, for the most part, mirror each other. We, or I, as intentionally recategorize things. It was part of uh, helping us to avoid a disconnected program. And first off, I think Casca and Caltrans has done a wonderful job. In fact, they have set the standard, um, and and someone who's new to SWIP writing should definitely rely on their tools. Of course, if you're doing a Caltrans job, you have to use their SWIP templates and their reference material.
Right.
But what we wanted to do is shake things up and by changing the categories, get people to get back to the foundations, the fundamentals, to rethink what is the purpose of this BMP. So when I say raindrop BMP, what does that mean? Now that might sound weird to everybody, um, but raindrop BMP is really an erosion control BMP. because erosion starts with the raindrop. And so we're going to have a BMP that addresses that raindrop striking the ground. And so under raindrop BMPs, we have like scheduling and maintain existing effective soil cover, um, establish temporary cover, maximize organic content, have soil binding, and then our another category is slow the flow BMPs. Slow the flow, again, faster water is moving, the more erosion we're going to get, right? Fast moving water is the enemy of erosion control. So it speaks to the
Right.
purpose of what we're trying to accomplish with these things, like I call them speed bump BMPs. Just like in an alley, you have a speed bump, it
Yeah,
slows the flow, right?
yeah,
Slows the flow of traffic.
I like it.
We have
Love
speed
that.
bump BMPs on our job site. So we were very intentional about recategorizing these BMPs, not because we think we have a better system of organization, but it was with the purpose to help us rethink how we do SWPs.
Yeah,
To
sure. I mean, I think when you're approaching something from an educational standpoint, it makes sense to make it easy for people to remember, understand. I mean, the regulatory part of it will come. So I think that's great. I think it's a great approach. I think it's neat. Especially like again, especially somebody like me, like I like people to talk to me like I'm five. So I get that. I totally got it. Like the raindrop, the speed bump. I'm with you. Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah. Yeah.
we have treatment BMPs. And when we think treatment, we think of people like you've had on your show. I've heard them, the passive treatment people, the active
Yep.
treatment system people. But
Yep.
track out controls, isn't that's treating tires? Street sweeping, that's treating streets. And so not that these are brand new BMPs. I'm sure we do it the same way that other categories and like Casca and Caltrans and other places around the nation do it, but we just put it in a different box so that we
Right.
understand, oh, I need to treat that street. So anyway.
So when we talk about BMPs, the elephant in the room is always the ugly, not four letter word is the word maintenance, right? So I think for what we've been discussing today in the SWP world, it's all fine and good until it has to be implemented. So, what is your approach or thoughts on getting buy-in from the people that have to implement it? The realization that this is actually becomes a team sport, and how to create a culture that actually cares, and it
Oh
just doesn't
yeah.
become that piece of paper sitting in that trailer that, hey, we did the piece of paper. Oh,
Yeah.
we were supposed to do what was in the booklet, and we were supposed to do what was in the documentation. You wanna speak to that?
Oh, you're talking about the biggest disconnect of them all. This is where most programs will become disconnected, is that this SWIP is is subcontracted out to that environmental consultant, and it's developed pretty independently of everything else. For the most part, a lot of SWIPs I do have done in the past is pretty independent. And it takes effort for a SWIP developer to say, wait a minute, as you said, this is a team sport. I need to be talking to the players, not just to find out, like when is the project starting and when it's ending, but what's the sequencing? And a question that rarely gets asked is, do you have any bid line restrictions? There's been times that I've written a SWIP and um, the contractor looks and goes, well, I would love to use compost socks, but we don't have a bid line item for that. We only have bid line items for these certain BMPs, but not for compost socks. I can't use them. And so, as a SWIP writer, that would have been something really good to know from the get go, right? So
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
you got to have this
yeah,
communication
yeah.
between the
Wow.
the SWIP writer, between the engineering team, the design team, between the owner of the project and the contractor. And so, getting that input to produce a meaningful SWIP, as a SWIP developer, I have options. I can do different things. It's not like every time there's only one way to accomplish our goal of erosion control or sediment control. I got options. But talking through it with the team that's actually going to be implementing this and paying for the BMPs. Now, of course, there are those contractors that don't want to do anything, and that's not an option. But assuming we're talking with someone who really does want to implement an effective program, but is also trying to manage a project, I want to get their input, and I want to understand what are their limitations, what are their logistical limitations, their budget limitations, how can we make this work together? And so where we get our biggest disconnect is when nobody's talking. And I produce my SWIP independently. I say, here you go. And of course, when they read it, if they read it, they're like, no, this is not reality. And right
Wow,
there,
two huge nuggets, right? Number one, big disconnect when nobody's talking. There's something for life in general outside of stormwater, and then that nugget about the bid line, that about it, just it's crazy to me. But I feel like it becomes sometimes it's an afterthought. In fact, I mean I won't mention them, but I know of a company out there that will do, last minute SWIPs. And so everything's already done. And it's people that are getting called on the carpet and they're having to produce a SWIP after the fact,
sometimes
which is
actually
terrible.
sometimes
Which
that's
sounds
an
like a terrible way to do it. Go
but
ahead. I'm
that can
sorry.
be an advantageous position.
No,
Who I feel
maybe.
sorry for are the civil engineers who have to produce a SWIP,
Oh, yeah.
and the job hasn't even bid out yet. They have no idea who the
Okay.
contractor is going to be. So you don't even have
Yeah,
the ability to talk to the contractor.
that's true. That's true. You don't have that team. You don't know who your team is yet.
Yeah. So a SWIP has got to be evergreen. It's got to be living. Yes, we can start with a skeleton SWIP with reasonable expectations because maybe we got to get the construction general permit coverage in place so we can get our grading permit so the project can advance. But then the job bids out, we get the contractor there, then we need to make sure we can revise our SWIP to meet their limitations, their expectations, the way they're viewing this project. We can then uh, uh, amend that SWIP to make it meaningful. But it needs to change as conditions change and as the project progresses from the very early stages to the final stabilization.
Yes, dynamic. It needs to be dynamic. It's a living document, 100%.
Yeah. Uh,
Um,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say we've kind of touched on it again, something we touched on, but I want to make sure we're right in everybody's ear on specific things. So, who's the book for? Who specifically is this
Oh,
book for?
yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. You probably have read a lot of super boring college books, right? Just as I have. I was a
No, I have not. I did
oh,
would not. I've told you before. I am a YouTube figure it out guy. That is me. I
I
did not. College said, "Hey, thanks for partying with us," and gave me the boot, sir. But my wife, however, the civil engineer that I spend my life with, she has read and she's going to read. I haven't let her have this book yet. She's going to read your book. I promise you that. But I do know what you mean by boring books. Go ahead.
oh yeah, I was a chemistry major, um, and I last thing I wanted was a super technical book um, that loses everybody in the first two pages. Um, so I someone told me a very wise thing when I started writing. They're like, picture a person, a single person who is your audience.
Yes.
Keep one person in mind who's your audience and keep that person in view from the beginning to the end of your book writing process. And you
Like
speak
you're
to
having a
that
conversation with them.
one
Yeah.
person.
Right. Yeah.
And so my one person, actually I had two, but my one person, my predominant person was the construction worker. In fact, I can even view that person in my mind still today. I know what they look like. I know what they're wearing. I know how they act. I know how they speak. And that is who I wrote to. Now, we do have some pretty technical stuff in there. I mean, we go over the Russell equation,
Oh
the
yeah.
Bessel equation, time of concentration. We go into depth in hydrology. Um, but I wanted to make sure that I took that person through the process. In other words, when I got to hydrology, I didn't want to all of a sudden shift to talking to a PhD. I wanted to
Right.
still talk to that construction person. I'm not saying construction people are stupid or ignorant or no, not at all. But how they speak, how they relate, um, I wanted to keep them engaged. I wanted to everything I wrote, I wanted to be as if I was talking to that person. And so I throw in
Oh,
some humor. You know, there's some subtle humor in there. We make fun of some things that you see out in the field. Um, but we still go deep and we'll talk about these hydrology equations. We'll talk about post construction um, uh, treatment measures and stabilization. And so we still go deep, but we do it in a way that I'm hoping that whoever reads it will understand it. Now, okay, maybe I'll offend a few PhDs out there. You know, I didn't speak their speak, but
we're
you know,
okay with that.
maybe I, you know, but I'm hoping that I don't lose the person who I view as really wanting and needing this information.
No, that's it. That's great. That's great. And it is different. People they now there's a big difference in you know like we talked before, back to our other analogy, there's a big difference saying you can build a house, or you know, to the actual building of a house. The actually when you've been on your tools for 20 years, you think and talk way differently than somebody that's only ever project managed. It just is what it is. It's different. And so it's cool that you are trying to relate to the person that's actually out there, in the wild, out there in the field, installing the silt fence.
Yeah.
you know.
I think stormwater professionals like you and I and people who are, you know, well educated in stormwater, I think they'll get something out of the book. But it was my goal that no matter where you fall in the stormwater spectrum, that I won't lose you. There will be things there that you will find meaningful.
Oh no, this thing is awesome. And for me, there's tons of pictures in it too.
Oh
The
yeah,
print's
and you know
small.
what?
Print's,
I
the print's kind of small, John, but it's okay.
I found out, you know, I wanted color pictures and stuff. I
Oh
found out that's not cheap. That's why
no,
the
man, this book, I don't. I appreciate you sending me one because this is great. This is great. This is it's great. It is great. Um, and I just, I think I got it. I mean, you said it, and we've been gone. So like I said, blew through some of it just to check it out. And I'm like, this is amazing. And I did find it on the back while we've been talking. It does say handbook, but it's real tiny right here on the back. It says handbook. Should be like right across the front. Big handbook.
oh
Well, as we
yeah,
kind of
and I want
like
to give
the
a
like what it
shout
like
out.
the Hitchhiker's Guide. This is the Hitchhiker's Guide to to
And
SWP management.
Ty, I want to give a shout out. I had some
Uh,
incredible people support me in this. Of course,
oh
my
yeah,
company,
please.
WGR Southwest, the owners, John Ripley and Gray Martz, they hugely supported me in this. Uh, then David Franklin. Some of your listeners may know him. Uh, he's Envirotech MPDS. He's a trainer. He's been a trainer for years. He's the guy who trained me. He wrote my foreword, and he also did the very detailed peer editing. I had other peer editors such as Bob Schultz with Varix and Robin Tolley with Tolley Consulting Group. Mary Larson was Stormwater Specialist. Um, all of these individuals that I highly respect in our industry, industry leaders for sure. They were so gracious to read the book. I mean, 400 pages. That's a huge ask, right? And they read the book. They provided meaningful input to content, and I really want to thank them publicly for helping this become a reality.
Yeah, like with everything else we discussed today, it takes a village, right? It's a team effort. Uh, I'd like you to just think about anything we may have missed, and while you're doing that, I want to read your dedication out of the book, if that's all right with you, because I think it really kind of, for me, it also sums up, like, we talk about who should read this and just the labor of love that was put into it. But this book is dedicated to those who not only want to create SWPs and install and inspect BMPs, but who also want to understand the whys and the hows behind what we do on a daily basis. It is also for the person who goes to the Grand Canyon to gawk and ponder, not on what they see, but on what is missing and how it was removed. It is dedicated to those wanting to connect the dots in their minds and on the job site. I think that kind of sums it up. So did we miss anything, John?
You have to read the book and find out.
Thank you so much for coming back on the pod. I wish you the best on the book. I think it's awesome. I think everybody should go. If you're in the business, you should go get a copy.
Period. Yeah, and check out our connections course. It's not just for California. I think anybody anywhere would appreciate the connections course, which goes hand in hand with the book. You'll actually be reading the book, but you'll get a diploma from our course, and it's a 7-lesson. It's not an easy thing. We're going to give you quite a workout in learning how to write a SWP, and your final assignment is actually writing a SWP. So
awesome.
That's a great tool. The other thing we've been playing around with just a little bit is with an app. We've been writing an app. You can check it out. We're hoping to release that here in the next month or so, called GetStorm.io. And it's a SWP writing app created by QSDs for QSDs or SWP writers. Whatever you call yourself, wherever you are. I think that's a pretty cool app, but maybe on a future podcast we'll actually talk about that.
Yeah. So make sure you send me all the links. I think we've got most of them, but I don't. Is that one? Where's that one at on the website?
It's brand new. GetStorm.io. GetStorm.io.
Storm.io. Okay. We'll link it up. John, thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Stormwater World Podcast, and a big thank you to our sponsor, Bloxam & Company, home of the coconut fiber stormwater inlet filter that is super easy to install and maintain. Make sure you go check them out at Bloxam & Company. You can check them out at bloxam.com. That's BLOCKSOM.com. And we'll see you on the next episode.